Let's hone in on this discussion now. Cases of child neglect and extortion once again coming under the spotlight in South Africa. Various organizations have raised concerns about the high number of cases committed specifically by parents against their children. Let's make sense of all of this. Bring in Save the Children CEO Gugu Xaba, who joins us now via our video link. Gugu, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much indeed for making time. I mean, what's brought this issue back into the public domain, as it were, is a case that's currently being heard today, actually, in the Vanderbijlpark Magistrates Court, where a mother is accused of trafficking her own child. It turns out that she also received 75,000 rand on the day she reported that this child might have been kidnapped. I mean, from the work that you do, and again, this is nothing new, are you finding that in many instances, it's people who are meant to be protecting these children that again are accused of committing these crimes?
Thank you very much, Ayanda, for the question. And you become speechless when you have to respond to the question that you are raising. Because in the past 15 years, I can safely say, we've been saying South Africa is accepting or normalizing violence, such that we know since then that it is over 30% of children, or I can safely say 1 in every 3 children is violated at home. And that number is growing. And when we say at home, we are saying the very parent is violating the child. The very relatives that this child has are violating the child. So we have said it, that we have normalized violence. And what is happening now, we are seeing a growing trend. And it's even more scary because it's easy for parents to sell their own children, like the case in Vanderbijlpark, simply because they will claim they are stressed because of no jobs. They are stressed because their fathers maybe have left them. They've got other mental health issues. But now, the question that we always raise is that, can we plan to have a child so that you have a child when you have an ability to take care of the child? Because a child is a responsibility. It means you must be present. You must respond to the needs of that child. And if there's a difficulty in taking care of your child that has arrived on earth, then find a way of bringing the child to social services, because the child is better off being cared of by the state than being cared of by their parents. And that's what we see of late in South Africa. Thank you.
Sure. It's interesting you say that, because in this particular case, we're referencing this woman, we're told, is currently pregnant with twins, and as part of a bail application has told the court that she wants to be released because she's got 2 other children in her care. It's certainly painting a picture of somebody who, I suppose, is either not engaged in these kind of discussions or is dealing with issues that are so intrinsic that, frankly, this is not even top of mind for her. Questions around family planning and finding alternatives.
In many instances, South Africans, as I said, and I want to emphasize that, we think it's normal to take your responsibility and give it to somebody else. And that is wrong. It's an attitude that must change, because as soon as government takes us to school and we've got free schooling, we've got free health services, that means government is playing their part. Then as an individual, I must be a citizen that understands that I also have a responsibility to support this government, for this government to be able to cope with the needs of its citizens. And one of them is making sure that you are making different decisions. And we cannot continue to claim government is not doing anything for its people. Instead, the people of South Africa need to change the behavior. You need to know when there is violence. The fact that you're neglecting your own child, you are a violent person and you shouldn't be trusted to even take care of that child. Same happens when people get SASSA money. 350 right now, is around 400 and something. When they don't buy food for their children and we see malnutrition and they use that money to beautify themselves, it just tells you that we've got irresponsible people. So South Africans need to change and do things differently. And Save the Children South Africa is saying we can do things differently when we care for our children, when we give them the childhood that they deserve.
Given what you've just said then, would Save the Children support calls, for example, that the children who are currently in the care of this woman should actually just be taken away, including these twins once they're born?
Save the Children would support that, because if we don't, we will hear of another incident where she has traded using her children. So Save the Children would support that. If a parent is unable and is irresponsible, let's make sure then as government we take care of those children. Yeah. And we do have children that can be adopted, and in some instances people look for those children, so you're better off doing that. But we are not taking the responsibility away from parents by taking these children as government or as institutions that take care of children. We are calling upon parents to be responsible parents and take care of their children.
Sure. What's chilling, of course, is that this 2-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown, even as you and I speak now. And hopefully, they are found and they're in a good place. But I can't help but wonder of the kind of impact something like this has, this level of trauma on children, which may very well feed into the very dysfunctional society, let's face it, Gugu, that we're living in.
Definitely, Ayanda, because any experience, traumatic experience that you go through as a child will surface as you grow up. And that is why right now we are seeing post-traumatic disorder, high depression, anxiety, because of the toxic environment that we bring up our children. And so it's important that South Africa as a whole realizes that the mental health problems that we're dealing with now were planted in the home. For instance, we know that emotional abuse is also growing at home besides physical abuse. Now, how are we ever going to raise a community of children or adults that are well if we are continuing to inflict the pain within the home? So it's important that we see the challenges that this brings. The fact that we have to deal with or build more mental institutions, and yet we could have prevented it by taking care of our children. Doesn't make sense. So it's important that communities listen to what we're saying. We're saying this on radio, we're saying this on paper, we're talking about it in community meetings, but people don't listen. People want to hear a different dialogue, and yet this is the most important dialogue that we should be having.
Yeah, absolutely. One has to wonder what it will take to shift the dial. Gugu Xaba, Gulu, thank you, I beg your pardon. It is Gugu Xaba, yes. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. We appreciate the time. Gugu Xaba is the CEO of Save the Children South Africa.